Pittsburgh do this all the time. I've been playing them for 13 years. When you avoid the middle, they go into the middle. It's never changed.
And welcome to the first edition of the Steel City Sermon. I am your host, Mr. Roy Countryman, and this is presented by Blitzalytics. And I have many titles at Blitzalytics, but this is going to be the first video series of many in this video series, hopefully, of the Steel City Sermon. I have many hats I wear here at Blitzalytics. I'm the beat reporter for the Steelers. I also have an assistant beat reporter, Mr. Ryan Lippert. We thank you for all your efforts while I've been out with a little bit of sickness here and taking some time with my family. So thank you, Ryan. But I'm also the assistant scouting director at Blitzalytics, as well as the director of developmental leagues, mostly the XFL, but also had some exposure on the AEF as well in all those efforts. Make sure you check out the XFL Files podcast. We just started there. Excuse me. I've also been a regular contributor to our Pick 6 podcast, where we have fun with my boy at Rob Graphics and at DC on Blitz, David Connors. So as we start here, you know my Twitter at PreacherBoyRoy, but this here show is all about Steelers, and it is titled The Steel City Sermon. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Steel City Sermon for all your questions and needs and everything Steelers related that might have a twist for me. So we're going to jump in here. The first part of the show is going to be called The Prelude, and we're going to look at a couple people here, especially players, and talk about them for a period going forward. The first one that is up, and it's been a talking point of many talking radio people here in Pittsburgh, and that's Mr. Bud Dupree. He's had a breakout season this year, mostly in a contract year. We all know that lights a fire underneath the proverbial hindquarters here whenever you know that big check can be in the mail this offseason. So we know he is only 26 years old. He has matched his career high with 6 sacks already to this point. He also has 2 forced fumbles, which is the most he's ever had in his career. He has 8 tackles for loss because he has been playing a lot of good run defense, especially shown this past week. He has 8 tackles for loss on top of that. So, where do I get started here? I mean, Bud Dupree, he's been the punching bag for a lot of Steelers fans over the last few years, and for good rights. He didn't produce as a first-round pick. He's always had the athletic ability. He is an excellent tester, good 40-yard dash time. He looks good on the hoof when you see him, but we were always aggravated as Steeler fans. You've seen him 5 yards in a cloud of dust going straight up the field as the offensive tackles just push him wide. He didn't show the bend he needed to be a consistent pass rusher. But on my visit that I had at training camp this year, he was quite impressive because he used more aggressive pursuit angles off the edge, which is always step one when you're trying to get to that quarterback, is put yourself in a position to where you can get home and make those game-changing plays and separate the ball from the quarterback and getting them sacks and getting underneath. Because he does have bend. He does have the ability to get up underneath. It's just he doesn't have the ability to go upfield and bend at the same time. So those aggressive pursuit angles have definitely helped him. He has gotten stronger at the point of attack. His upfield burst has always been good. His first step has always been good. And his hand usage has definitely been more refined this year. So those heavy hands and that combination of not only pass rush, but where he's also made a difference is in run defense. He has been a complete player, and this is going to put the Steelers in quite the conundrum this offseason because right now he's playing in the last year of his contract at just over $9 million, $9.232 million. And next year, like I said, he's an unrestricted free agent, and he's going to want big money. And frankly, on the open market, he will get it. Even though he might be only a one-year wonder, he's always been a steady player. He just hasn't been that outstanding player that you hoped him to be. And next year, according to over the cap numbers, their projections, the franchise tag for a linebacker, which is what he would be most likely designated at because he plays outside linebacker, the franchise tag would be 16.266 million, and as a transition tag, if they would want to utilize that, the Steelers front office would be just a hair over 14 million, 14.087 million. So that leads the Steelers front office to quite the conundrum because right now they are only sitting around 4.5 million for next year in open cap space. They're only a little bit over 3 million this year, and you can utilize rolling over cap space to the next season, which a lot of teams do, and a lot of the bad teams do. So even at that point, you're only going to have maybe 7 million at most, probably closer to 6 once rollover and the rest of the season expenses out of that account. So what are the Steelers should do? Do you really trust this new and improved Bud Dupree? I mean, I hope so. I hope he keeps playing like that. There is a little bit of false money that the Steelers can come up with here through some cap moves coming into next year. And that's going to be through some cuts. And it's going to be kind of hard cuts, maybe at that. Some grizzled veteran, maybe you might have to cut to keep this pass rusher. They can come up with additional cap space. Anthony Chickillo, he just re-signed. He had some off-the-field problems, got cleared here and back on the field. But if they release him after this year, they'll get a cap savings of $5 million. If they release Big Dan Collars, who's really been a mediocre rotational defensive lineman at best, they can save $1.5 million. And if they release one of their big free agent signings this year, Mark Barron, $5.25 million they get saved, which in my opinion are not gonna miss him a lot. I know he's played a good amount of snaps and been okay, but I think you can replace his snaps with a rookie or a guy they probably should have re-signed last year, Mr. L.J. Fort, who's been flourishing with the Baltimore Ravens. So you might see them cut them 3 guys to begin with, and then the fourth, which would be very hard to deal with, that's Mr. Ramon Foster, the stalwart at left guard, the leader of the offensive line, but he's had some injury problems this year with a concussion. He's starting to show age. He's 33. He has played well while on the field, but if you cut him, you can save $4 million. And there's some other guys on the front of the offensive line that's going to need paid in addition to Mr. Dupree, and that's Matt Filer as a restricted free agent, and also Mr. B.J. Finney. So you're going to have to make a lot of decisions this offseason with this front office. And Bud Dupree is just the tip of the iceberg. With this improved play, he's definitely going to be asking for that franchise tag amount. And he stated that, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing that he does and he'd show up. But I don't know. It's going to be a hard get for Mr. Colbert. And if they can really fit him under the cap is questionable going forward because you have 2 guys coming up in the near future that you're going to be paying a lot of money to, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. They're going to be having to prioritize giving him an extension this coming off season because he's 22 years old and he's going to be an unrestricted free agent the year after. And we all know the Steelers model that they sign players in their next to last year if they want to keep you. Most of the time, they don't keep you after negotiating after that year. So Bud Dupree, thank you for your efforts. I mean, I hope that they can get something done with you, but I'm always a little leery to hand a big payday over to a guy that's just been good, and then all of a sudden they have this epically great one season because they know the motivation is there that big payday can be coming. So, in my opinion, I wouldn't give it to him. I could be eating a lot of crow in a few years from now because he does have that athletic profile to really blow up, especially if things start clicking. I mean, it's never been a question, is he a hard worker? He's always put in the hard work. The bookend chemistry of him and TJ Watt has been dynamic this year, especially with the interior presence of Hayward and Tuitt when they were both healthy. And now with just Hayward singularly, has been impressive that he's still been able to get that kind of pressure. And he's been a monster in run defense as well. So Mr. Bud Dupree, keep up the good work. Make it a hard decision for Kevin Colbert. I don't know if I'd pay you myself. I might prioritize some of the other guys here and see if we can't, mitigate some of the loss if we did lose you through an Ola Adeniyi that I'd love to see get some more reps and opportunities. But keep up the good work. Keep playing hard, and even if not, you know, it's going to be hard to keep you because Juju, and then the following season, after that, after picking up a fifth-year option, TJ Watt's going to have a monster deal that we're going to have to sign him to. So that's going to be upper echelon contract. Are you going to be able to fit him in there? If you do franchise tag him and try to, maybe you just use that as a placeholder to hopefully maybe get him in a deal like around a Zadarius Smith type. But I don't know if he'd be willing to work here and stay. Maybe he likes the chemistry. Maybe he likes playing off of TJ Watt and take a little bit of discount. But it's going to be intriguing going forward. Mr. Bud Dupree, though, good job and keep up the good work. But it's forcing the hand of a lot of people here at the end of the season to see what this front office thinks of you. So the second player we're going to highlight here is Mr. Minkah Fitzpatrick. We all know the type of effect he's had on this defense. It's been season changing and probably franchise changing for the next few years. I know a lot of Steelers fans were up in arms that, oh my goodness, we got rid of our first round pick. We never trade our first round pick. Well, times are changing. We traded up in the first round this past year to get Devin Bush when we identified a generational type talent. And to see Colbert go out and add that type of a presence and a generational type talent, yeah, I'm going to say it, folks. He is a generational type talent for a 1, a 5, and a 6. I would have took 2 first-round picks and gave it to him for Fitzpatrick because he has allowed all these complementary players to fit into their roles and thrive at it. He's allowed, the Cam Suttons to fit into the pass defending sort of nickel role, and the Mike Hilton, who, the aggressive blitzing type, and letting Steven Nelson and Hayden just take care of the edges and along the outside as corners. And you're letting Terrell Edmonds, who's a freak athlete himself and a really young player in that same draft class, be able to be a more aggressive downhill flowing and filling safety while making a few key pass defense himself. But the type of presence and instincts and the ability to just make the game-changing interceptions have been so fun to watch this year. I mean, I didn't know what to think after Ben went down and the type of season we were going to have. Kind of a lost cause, I was thinking. But the faith that the front office showed and the team and the players that were in that building really says a lot. And they made the right decision to go out and take this player, not only for his skill set, but we were just talking about contracts and be able to fit him in. You might have to cut some key veterans or maybe a key piece from last year and Barron getting brought in here. Not saying he's been playing like it, but they paid him like it. Minkah is only 23. He's going to be growing with a lot of these young leaders, the Devin Bush, the TJ Watts, and, even the old guard and Cam Hayward. He's only 23. He's under team control until 2021 at a rate not per year, but over that amount of time, $5.645 million. That type of malleability under the salary cap and them dollars that you would have been trying to, allot for a Sean Davis who is underachieved is epic when it comes to Colbert. That is GM of the year type stuff, especially when you look at, then you gain another year of control for the 2022 season under his 5th-year option, and this is an absolute steal. So his on-the-field presence has been dynamic, but the type of contract dynamic that it adds to allow, some more money to maybe keep a Bud Dupree because you're not paying your stud safety as much. Don't get me wrong, they're going to have to pay him eventually, but right now it's giving you a little leeway in the last few years on that back nine of Ben Roethlisberger's career to really keep surrounding him with some talent. So that's a guy that we wanted to highlight was Minkah Fitzpatrick after Bud Dupree. So enough of the defense. We know that that's what's carrying the Steelers this year after Ben's injury. We're going to move on to Mr. Rudolph. Mr. Rudolph, Mason Rudolph. It's been an up and down season for you, buddy. I mean, I know a lot wasn't expected of you coming right into the season, but you've done so. I got to give you a lot of kudos for coming back and playing as hard and not really missing a beat after taking a devastating hit like you did. A scary hit that a lot of players might not have been able to come back and get through. So kudos on you, but you got to step it up, buddy. There's some things you're missing right on the field. You've been efficient in the dink and dunking game that Randy Fiechner. I know you can only throw the plays that are called, but you've missed some guys down the field, and Johnny Holton on a number of plays, and even Juju. And this, you just gotta trust what you see, buddy. You can't be a perfectionist. I know you're a film rat. I know you want to do everything according to the book. But when you get out inside those lines and inside the hash marks, you know, things break down. These players are fast. You got to react quicker. You've been able to fit the ball in tight windows. You've had some, jaw-dropping throws to where you put it in the only spot it can. Just trust what you see. Let it loose. I mean, that's what was so invigorating with Duck Hodges when he came in for the one game he did. He had nothing to lose. I mean, he was an undrafted free agent, a tryout guy. He made it there. He got his opportunity, and he just slung the ball around. He took his chances when they were there, even though the one interception was awful. But, I mean, when the opportunity is there, you can't just be tunnel vision on check down routes and outlet receivers. I mean, Jalen Samuels, just for example, the last game, had 13 receptions as an outlet receiver. All 13 of those receptions were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. I know we're a run after the catch type team, but I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. I remember a key play coming down the stretch here that Samuels ran a short route and Deontay Johnson ran a crossing route completely wide open. There was no receiver. He actually ran past Jalen Samuels, if I'm not mistaken, and there was not a defender in his area for probably 10 to 15 yards. And that type of separation in open field for Deontay Johnson would have been a humongous play. But they had Jalen Samuels bracketed. You dumped it off to him, and it was a simple 2-yard gain. Those are the small things that we're not seeing right now that you might be getting that victory right now against maybe some bad teams here and there. But if we're going to be making the playoffs, you need to put your big boy pants on, click, click, boom, and throw that ball into them tight windows. Even if you throw an interception, the fans are gonna boo you and hate on you. But I'd rather see you be aggressive than timid. So get some aggressiveness and let's see you throw that ball down the field, Mason. I know you got it in you. I remember seeing the highlights of you and your buddy James Washington. Let's see that show again in Heinz Field. I'll be there Sunday. I'll be the loudest guy cheering if you're doing it. So we're gonna move on here. We highlighted our three players here in the prelude. We're gonna move on to the meat and potatoes portion of this video, and that's the sermon session. I'm gonna start preaching at you guys. We're gonna start the season superlatives. I know I missed the mid-season part, but we're going to move on to the superlatives. I love doing this kind of exercise. I always do it while sitting watching the games, maybe week to week or throughout a season, especially in draft time. I love superlatives, getting to see the guys that we like. But we're going to go through a couple here, and then we're going to move on to the next thing. So season superlatives this year. Breakout performer, breakout guy this year. I already talked about one of them, Mr. Bud Dupree. But I ain't gonna grab the low hanging fruit. I'm going with Mr. Matt Filer. There's questions. Matt Filer played well last year, but was he gonna be the right tackle even this year, or was Mr. Okorafor gonna step in and be the right tackle? We know they spent a high draft pick on him. He's athletic. He fits the profile. But all this guy does is work and work. Put his nose down, his head down, work hard, do what he's asked, and flourish. And this guy, he'll be a restricted free agent after the year. And as I was talking before, when it came to Bud Dupree and the cap situations that the Steelers are going to be in, they're going to have to make some decisions here. And this week particularly might be big. I know there's some rumors about an offensive line shakeup, which we'll be talking about a little later in our game preview. But Matt Filer has been solid. He has not gave up a lot of pressures. He's been able to battle consistently against a lot of good pass rushers out there on the right side, and he has been quite impressive. The Steelers' offensive line as a whole has gave up less than 10 sacks, and he's a big reason why. Not the blind side, but that side right there has been locked down when it came to pass rushing forces, and he's been a road grader as well in the run blocking department. He's been able to get out in front as well, even pulling, showing that athleticism. So, Matt Filer, you're my breakout guy here, and I love giving the big nasties some love. So, it's going to be interesting to see between him and BJ Finney, who are both free agents of some sort, put it that way, and the old guard and Ramon Foster, who just signed a deal. Who's going to be the ones that are left standing after this season? Comeback kid is the next category, and this one was easy for me. Mr. Chris Boswell, the Wizard of Boz. I bequeath you this title. You wasn't even sure that you were going to be our kicker this year when you were in camp. Mr. Matthew Wright was challenging you, but when I was in training camp, seeing you kick down there, you were cool like cool cucumbers, man. You were put it through almost every single time, and you just continually keep doing that every single game here. You missed the one, but I'll let you have one. This guy, I have confidence in you. You're consistent. You're bringing it. You're even keel. We're back to having the guy from the year prior. Everybody has an outlier year, so we'll let you go with that. But good job bouncing back like you did, Mr. Boswell. Our next category, Rising Star. This one, it's interesting to see which guy I put in here. That's Mr. Deontay Johnson. He is a rookie. I was kind of evaluating the first, second, and third year players for this one. The main competition was Cam Sutton. He had a lot of good plays this year so far out of the nickel, but we're going with Deontay Johnson because this wide receiving core, as we know, after AB has left, needed an injection of youth and some talent. And the formerly departed and wide receiver coach, Mr. Drake, took a lot of heat from his former employer, Mr. Arians, Bruce Arians, for stealing his guy. And we're seeing a lot of that now, those traits that he's seen, the ability to get open and separate in small areas and come up with game-changing plays after the catch. And even on deep routes, having that speed to be able to make a difference. He is a fun player to watch. He's been making a lot of plays lately. Him and Mason Rudolph have chemistry, and I want to see that chemistry build the last half of the year. And if we make the playoffs, he's going to be a big reason why, is that presence as a number 2 to kind of get some of the coverage away from Juju in the type of effect that he's been having. So Deontay Johnson, you're my rising star. Biggest disappointment this year. I know a lot of Steeler fans want me to say one name and one name only here, but I am not throwing Juju Smith-Schuster under the bus. Juju, I got to give you some kudos here. Big tip of the cap. You're not getting your numbers. You're not, having the impact as you did in years prior, but I ain't going to blame you for a second and third quarterback that second and third string quarterback you're dealing with. And not only that, been dealing with some lower body type issues with your feet and ankles throughout the season. So you have some excuse and leeway from this Steeler fan here. And I'm just going to throw you in an honorable mention just because if not, I think Steeler Nation would probably, fill up my inbox pretty quickly. But my biggest disappointment is none other than Stephon Tuitt. And it has nothing to do with while he's on the field. This man was a game wrecker. He was blowing up offensive linemen. Him and Cam Hayward were the brothers of destruction up front, and then outside pass rush with Dupree and Watt with Tuitt. He was at an all-pro level when he went down with his injury. So the only reason he's being listed as disappointment is I don't get to see him the rest of the year because that front seven with Fitzpatrick on the back end, you're talking number 1 type defense and an all-pro selection probably coming Mr. Tuitt's way. So get healthy, big guy, and I can't wait to see you next year as you continually evolve in this front seven with these other guys around you. So Rookie of the Year, this is the low-hanging fruit, Devin Bush. Absolute game changer in the middle of our defense. The speed is eye-opening. His ability to match up on tight ends and be right in the intermediate part of the field, sideline to sideline, coming up with all kinds of game-changing plays, 4 fumble recoveries. He has sacks. He has tackle for loss. He has tackle numbers. This guy, easy pick, Devin Bush. Under the radar hero. Now, this was an interesting one. I'm going to highlight one guy from my honorable mention just because he doesn't get a lot of love, and that's Mr. Johnny Holton. He kind of came out of nowhere even to win a roster spot when he was signed from the Raiders. There was not much fanfare. Not much was said about him. But this guy has legit speed, 4.4, 4.3 speed. Mr. Rudolph, as I was talking before, has missed him quite a few many times on 9 routes and deep routes. So I'm not going to completely blame you there. And he hasn't really had a shot to be the main kick returner this year. When he has, He has shown some speed. Might need a little bit better judgment of where to be running, but he hasn't had many opportunities. Mr. Switzer, which I'm not sure why it still continually gets those because he's sure-handed, and that's Tomlin's thing is to have sure-handed him and Danny Smith. So, but special teams wise, as a gunner and coverage teams, this guy is playing at a special team at a Pro Bowl level. He has been the first guy down the field, and he is consistently making tackles. If not, he's funneling him back to the pursuit. So this guy, big tip of the cap to Johnny Holton. For a lower rostered player, you're my under the radar honorable mention. But the under the radar hero is Mr. Steven Nelson, the number one cornerback for the Steelers. I'm sorry, Joe Hayden, I love you. I love the moxie and presence you brought since you came from Cleveland. But Steven Nelson, under some not so sure fanfare when he signed from Kansas City. A lot of fans were referencing him being the most thrown at cornerback last year when he was playing for KC. But this guy's been legit shut down one side of the field, or at least not giving up much separation throughout the entire season. He has locked it down. That presence has been epic. He's had only a few penalties. He had one egregious one the other week. But Steven Nelson, you're my guy. Keep doing your thing. You and Hayden have been great bookends. The slot corners have been great. And now with Fitzpatrick playing back here on the deep third, keep doing your work. This is fun defense to watch. So under the radar hero, Steven Nelson. Now, this is the important one. Team MVP. Where are we going with this? In my opinion, there's only two guys you look at here. Is it Minkah or is it TJ Watt? And in my opinion, I got to go Minkah. Minkah, since he's come to the Steelers, has just been an absolute playmaker. This team has been making turnovers left and right. I mean, TJ Watt is an unstoppable force. He should be in the Pro Bowl easily. All Pro should be coming his way. He's getting big money here in the future. He's one of the best, pass rushers in the entire league. He's up there on that level with Myles Garrett. But Minkah Fitzpatrick and the ability to let players sink into roles where they can really flourish, and then on top of that, make the type of game-changing plays and be basically the reason why we won a few games, has just been fun to watch after seeing the devastating loss of Ben. Not sure how this season was going to go. So Minkah Fitzpatrick, you're mine. TJ Watt, very close second. So Mr. Fitzpatrick, keep up the good work, and we're going to see you in the voting at the end of the year MVP. So we're going to move on to our next part of the sermon side of this. And we're going to little forecasting here. We're going to play Weatherman, forecasting the rest of the season. As we all know, right now we're sitting at 4-4 and not quite sure where we're at. I mean, we're 7th right now in the standings. We're just outside looking in with a playoff picture. And we're going to have a lot of competition. The Raiders just won an impressive game on Thursday. The Buffalo Bills, I mean, we could still be in consideration for the 5th seed, who currently have it right now. The Colts, who we just beat recently, and the Chargers we just recently beat. So there's a crew of about 5 for 2 positions here, including ourselves. So we're going to go through the rest of the schedule here and kind of forecast a final records and see where we might get going forward. This week, we all know we're facing the LA Rams, and this is going to be a tough matchup. This front 7 is legit. The offense as well for the LA Rams is also legit with the mastermind McVay at hand, and Goff being I'll say it, good system quarterback, a really good system quarterback. And I just see our defense might be able to go toe-to-toe with theirs, but the advantage on offense, especially with the injuries to our running back core, is, in my opinion, going to be hard to overcome. So I'm going with an L in this category as the LA Rams come to Pittsburgh and defeat us. So just for forecasting here, we're going to go with a loss this week. So that's going to leave us at 4-5 after week 10. Week 11, we are at Cleveland, and that I don't even really need to talk about it that much because Mr. Kitchens, I think you shouldn't be sitting down too much because that seat's awful hot. They have a lot of talent, and they are not percolating well over there a lot of egos and a lot of fanfare for not a lot of victories. That offensive line is in shambles. It is absolutely terrible on the outsides. They do have some talent inside, with Batonio and J.C. Treader there, but those offensive tackles are going to be turnstiles against our front seven. So I think this one's going to be a lot of sacks for Mr. Mayfield and a lot of um, turnovers coming our way in that game. So I'm going to call that a victory for us, and that's going to move us 5-5 after Week 11. Week 12, we stroll back in to Cincinnati, another AFC North foe, and I'll just say it: the winless Cincinnati Bengals. They always play us hard, but they're in a transition year under new coach Zach Taylor with Ryan Finley now at the helm. AJ Green still hurt. Not sure if we're going to see him the rest of the year. I think this is an easy W. So we're now at 6-5 after Week 12. We go to Pittsburgh, and we're going to be facing Cleveland again. The Dog Pound's coming to Pittsburgh, and as I said before, I think this is going to be an entire mess, and I think at this time we might be facing the interim head coach, not Mr. Freddie Kitchens. So I think that's another W against Cleveland. So that leaves us at 7-5 right now, going into Week 14 against the Arizona Cardinals at Arizona. We know we always have a rough time going out to the West Coast, but this season we did beat the Chargers. But the Fighting Cliff Kingsburys have been impressive. That defense needs some work. I mean, they can be run on, they can be passed on, and the offense for the Cardinals have been impressive with the passing and the talents of the multidimensional Kyler Murray, who I absolutely loved, as all Blitz Nation knows. But and David Johnson's been working back, and Kenyon Drake's been special since he's came over there, and Chase Edmonds, if he get there, they have some impressive talent on offense. But I think overall, our team, especially the defense, is going to be a challenge for that offensive line to contain. So I think that's a W as well against Arizona. And right now, we're looking at an 8-5 record after Week 4. Can you believe that? After where we came from, 8-5 in my opinion after Week 14. So Week 15, we have the Buffalo Bills coming to Pittsburgh. This is going to have a lot of playoff parameters coming out of this. If we come out of this game with a W, we're back into contention for the AFC North crown. That's if the Baltimore Raiders stumble. But I don't know if we're going to be able to beat the Buffalo Bills. They have a staunch defense, a good running game, and their quarterback has enough talent to go off on a week-to-week basis. He has John Brown, who's been playing well for them. They have some playmakers that not a lot of people know. And I'm actually going to count this one as a loss, guys, just because I could just see them coming in and upsetting us. They're a well-coached team. This could go either way. It's like a 60-40 type decision, and I'm just going to go with a loss here right now. So that leaves us at 8-6 after Week 15 with 2 games to go. Week 16, I'm just going to copy and paste from the Cleveland talk here. Offensive line suspect, decent defense. Might be facing their interim head coach, because I don't think Adam Gase should be even coaching now, but I definitely don't think he should be coaching in Week 16 for New York. This is the revenge Le'Veon Bell game. We'll see what happens there, even though he's tweaked his knee earlier. This is at New York, but I think Pittsburgh winds up coming with a victory here. So right now we're at 9-6, going to the last week of the season at Baltimore, and right now we're 9-6, and this could be a win and in type thing for wild card at the 6th seed, or it might even be a loss and still make it as the 6th seed. That's the type of season we're having here in the AFC, guys. It's just interesting. And if Baltimore doesn't slip up after a very impressive victory against New England, this could be ugly against us. Or they might be resting their starters if they're that far ahead. So this one could go a lot of different ways. I'm going to be saying that they're still in it, that we're going to be facing them for the division at this point, and I do believe Baltimore will outclass us in this one, as much as I hate it as a Steeler fan. But I believe that's going to be an L for us against Baltimore. So that's going to leave us with a final record of 9-7 after this season. And I believe we will slide in as the 6th seed, because we have key victories over those Indianapolis Colts and the Chargers. The key team to watch right now, if we're a Steeler fan, is going to be those Raiders. Raiders are gonna be a thorn on our side if they don't lose a game here or there, because I believe the Buffalo Bills are good enough to make the 5 seed. The Raiders are the ones we got to watch because we don't have a head-to-head win in a matchup there. So if you're a Steelers fan, start rooting against the Raiders if you want us to make the playoffs this year. So that ends our sermon portion of this video series, and we're going to move on to our game preview for this week. As I said, I will be at the Steelers game this week with my lovely wife of 10 years, and we're going to have a blast there, and hopefully I'll be sending you guys some pictures here for the Steel City sermon on our Twitter page and also my own at Preacher Boy Roy. But we're going to preview this matchup right now. The LA Rams are rolling into town. They're 5-3. They're currently in the seventh spot in the NFC wild card or NFC playoff race. And we all know that is the better conference this year, is the NFC compared to the AFC. And they're coming off a very satisfying win before their bye against the lowly Cincinnati Bengals. But we're going to roll right in here to our injury report. The Steelers are the ones that are facing more of a deficit here as we go to the injury front. They have a number of running backs and backfield players that are injured and out this week, with James Conner with his AC joint, multi-week injury there. Benny Snell, who had his knee scoped, he's also out this week. And Roosevelt Nix, re-aggravated his knee injury last week. So I'm not sure how long he's going to be out. So those all three backfield mates are gone. Then we also had Ramon Foster, who had got a limited practice in early this week and then had a slip up and had to go back in the concussion protocol. So he's out after falling back away there of some good progress. And then we had a late injury add, which is never good, and that's Mr. Juju Smith-Schuster, who popped up with a foot injury on Friday and was limited. And he got the questionable tag. Hopefully he will be good to go with a little bit of rest on Saturday's walkthrough and get to the game and be able to play there, because we're going to need him. Definitely going to need him. The Rams, they have two guys that are out. Actually, one guy was placed on IR. That's Mr. Bryce Hager, who's a core special teams player and linebacker with shoulder injury. Like I said, he was placed on IR. Brandon Cooks has another concussion. He has a history of concussion problems, and he was actually coming to Pittsburgh anyway this week to visit some of the specialists and the world-renowned brain doctors and concussion doctors here in Pittsburgh. So he's out. That looks like a multi-week injury. And then just one other player was listed on their injury report. That's JoJo Natson, the wide receiver and return specialist with just an illness. He was listed with a questionable. So you'll probably see him as long as he gets his fluids and feels better. So really on the injury front, the Steelers are the ones fighting the battle here on an uphill slope, and it's going to make a difference in this game. But we're going to move on to the next portion of our game preview after the injury report, and that's a little segment here that I like calling Going for Three. And the Going for Three is going to feature three different parts with the number 3 in. Yeah, synergy. So the first one is three kind of stories to keep an eye on going forward. And that's the first one we're going to talk about is an offensive line shakeup for the Steelers. Say, what? They only gave up 8 sacks. What are you doing? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So, Matt Filer has taken snaps this week in practice at left guard. Mr. Chooks Okorafor, who we mentioned earlier as the strong play of Filer, that he took snaps at right tackle. But I'm going to throw some shade on all this because I'm not so sure that what they're making it out of, the media and the stories that came out of it, are going to be that important on Sunday. We'll see if it actually happens. I'm not so sure I would. This is not the game, in my opinion, to be disrupting the communication and the camaraderie that they've been building over the first set of games with these players. It really became a story because Wednesday, BJ Finney, as always this year, as he has most of the year, has moved over to center and got all those snaps in practice, and they inserted Filer at left guard and then gave Okorafor the snaps at right tackle because Marquise Pouncey gets veteran days off, basically. They're resting Pouncey as much as possible because he's a veteran player, want him to have his best plays on the field late in the year rather than on a practice field somewhere. So, as always, Wednesday, he gets the snaps at center. Filer plays left guard. Okorafor plays right tackle. No big deal. Okay, it might be just a thing getting the guy a little bit of reps because he has yet to be active. If he has been active, it's just been a handful of games because of the transformation of Zach Banner. Came in the training camp, in good shape and on a mission to make the team and play well, and he has. And that's the reason why Okorafor has been inactive, and it's going to be interesting to see now because Friday there was a report that they continued this lineup now with Pouncey playing center. So there was no real reason that Finney wasn't in at left guard getting those snaps. So it might be just a little bit of sleight of hand trying to get a little advantage against the Rams, that making them think maybe Filer will be playing left guard, Okorafor will be playing right tackle. But I really don't see no merit to it. BJ Finney has played pretty well in the absence of Ramon Foster, not only this year, but in previous years. And not only that, it brings a different kind of element to the game here. I do believe that Finney's a better short trap puller than Filer, although Filer has been impressive from his right tackle position. BJ Finney gives you that type of versatility to be able to short trap from left guard. Way better than Mr. Ramon Foster. I'm sorry, the big ragu. You're just not as athletic as that. So I would not rock that boat. I would let the Villanueva, Finney, Pouncey, DeCastro, and Filer set up as it is. I would not insert Filer at left guard. I wouldn't overthink, the blocking schemes and the ideas that what you want to try to pull for Michael Brockers and the abominable, offensive line man. That's the guy that blows it up. That's Aaron Donald. Don't overthink it. Go with the guys play well. Not saying Okorafor can't play well. It's just let's go with what's been working and keep with it. But I would not be surprised if we do see an offensive line shakeup because they are quite high on Okorafor, and maybe this is a let's see for maybe next year if Filer is going to be re-signed and be the guy for guard, and Finney maybe the long term for center, with Pouncey retiring in maybe a few years. So I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I wouldn't do it, but that's the first story we're going with here. The second story we're going to touch on here, and that is, who will the lead back be this week? As I mentioned here, we had a ton of running backs with Connor and Snell injured, and maybe even the more important, as we knew Snell was going to be out and Connor most likely, was Rosie Nix. Nix, in his short amount of time after being back, was a difference maker in blocking, lead blocking. But Trey Edmonds, if we did have some good news, got back to the practice field Friday in a full practice after sustaining a rib injury last game. And that was kind of disappointing because he was playing quite well when he got his opportunity. He showed some juice maybe not a lot of players or fans knew he had. He was a good tester. When he was coming out of the draft, he ran well. His explosive numbers and his triangle numbers were quite impressive. But he's a one-cut downhill, and he'll run you over. And he had some impressive wiggle and speed down the field for a big man. So I want to see more Trey Edmonds. Let's give him the ball a little bit. I don't get me wrong, Jalen Samuels, I love you. You're a great pass catcher, but your vision needs to improve, and you need to be more decisive when you hit that hole. Let's go. I know both Edmonds and Samuels both missed some blocking assignments and how to run behind them. Let's say that way. Maybe that's the proper way of saying it, but he didn't really follow his blocks that well last week, and it led to some lower gains or maybe even being stopped for a loss. So more reps. Let's see it happen. And let's not forget a little-known running back that they signed last week, and that's Tony Brooke James. And he has a lot of open field ability and probably the best speed in that backfield room right now. So I want to see a couple more snaps from him. He was quite impressive for the Falcons this preseason. He was impressive at Oregon when he got some opportunity. So let's see Tony Brooks James mixed in there too with that speed factor and what we're missing a little bit in our offense. He could be that hidden gem that not a lot of people know. And that kind of segues into my last story here. Are we going to see some improvements on special teams, namely the return game? Right now, the Steelers are rated 30th in starting field position. And I'm looking at you, Ryan Switzer. You went out with a back injury last game, but even before that, you have not been impressive. You haven't had as a slot receiver or a kick returner, you have not shown a lot, especially after the catch. You're sure-handed, I'll give you that. You are very sure-handed, but to be able to have acceleration and the ability to separate after the catch, it's just simply not there. And I'm sorry, you're a try hard guy, and I hope that you can keep working, and maybe there's route running and other things that you can do to endear yourself as you were to Ben. But for this season, you need to be given a different role. They need to let some of these other guys, like a Holton, at least he has some home run speed as a kick returner. And the guy I want to see, Tony Brooks James. He had some success at Oregon. He's not foreign to the concept as the kick return game. I believe he was over 25 or 28 yards kick return while he's at Oregon. Like I said, he had open field ability. He had some wiggle. He's elusive. He has good agility. And he has excellent speed. Let's give him a little taste of it. I know he's not the biggest guy. He's only like about 5'11", 190. He won't hold up to a lot of pounding, but he might be the guy that gives you that spark of a good return here and there that could give Mason Rudolph a chance to get out from playing behind the numbers. So are we going to see a new kick returner? That's my third story. So we're going to roll on to our next part of the going for three, and that is the three matchups to watch. Three matchups to watch, guys, real quick. Rams interior offensive line has been injured. Joseph Newtboom's out for the year, and also underperforming. Brian Allen at center and Austin Blythe at right guard have not played up to standards. They're going to have their hands full with Cam Hayward and Javon Hargrave, but the guy I think it's going to really eat is Vince Williams. The Steelers love to stunt. They love to use the games outside with their edge pass rushers and those talented front seven guys. And those delayed blitzes from Vince Williams due to some communication errors, I think are going to play big. So that's the guys I want to highlight there. The second matchup is the superstars. Left cornerback Jalen Ramsey, right wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. This one had some gasoline dumped on the fire. We had Jalen Ramsey throw out a statement saying that Juju, he's good, but he's not AB good, which, I guess is a backhanded compliment. But tip the hat to Juju that he didn't come out and, make it a Twitter war or anything, that he's just going to let his play do his talking. So it's going to be a lot of combat catches because we know Ramsey's aggressive. He likes going for the ball. He doesn't give up much separation. And Juju, as we know, had a little bit of a foot problem. So I think he's going to be more of a decoy than anything. We're going to have to see James Washington, the Vance McDonalds, and the Deontay Johnsons really step up in this contest. As far as the Rams receiving core, that's my third matchup to look at, is Cooper Kupp. The favorite of Jared Goff against the combination of nickel corners in Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton. Hilton more the short area guy to watch for, but Mike Hilton the short area and the blitzing type, and Cam Sutton the more pass defending nickel. This is going to be a key matchup because he is the favorite. He knows how to get open. He's savvy, and he's a monster after the catch. So they need to keep him in check or limit his exposure as much as possible. So we're looking here, guys. What can the Steelers do? And this is the last portion of going for three. 3 keys to a Steelers victory. How are we going to come up with that W? First, we must get consistent pressure on Jared Goff with our front seven, not having to get too exotic and bring those defensive backs into the equation, because Goff, he can hit the open man. He has a talented wide receiving core with Robert Woods and the Cooper Kupps, and even Josh Reynolds. Don't mistake him. He's got a huge catching radius, and he knows how to use it, and he's good athleticism. So Jared Goff, we're going to have to get at least 3+ sacks and force at least a turnover or two to have a chance in this game, because our offense is going to need a short field to capitalize on. Number 2, that Steelers offensive line, whether it's as it was in previous weeks or reshuffled, must limit that vaunted LA pass rush with the Dante Fowlers and Aaron Donalds, Michael Brockers, Samson Ebukam. I could go on and on here, guys. Corey Littleton even. To less than 3 sacks. And that's going to be a lot. I know the Steelers are one of the least sacked teams in the league, but they're going to need to keep up good work, and that's why I was saying I would not mess with that communication and that synergy that they've had already. But they're going to have to limit that, and that rolls me into the third key to a Steelers victory. Mason Rudolph, I'm looking squarely at you. You can take your dinks and dunks when you need them, but you need to put your big boy pants on, and you need to go out and just let it loose. Let it ride and let it die. Let it go out there, be you. Be aggressive and throw the ball down the field. Don't be afraid to let your players go out and make a play for you. Don't just be captain check down. So saying all that, going for 3, the different ones, is my prediction. And as I said before, when we went through our schedule forecasting here, this is going to be a tough game for the Steelers. I think the defensive kind of wash each other out. If you go to the special teams portion, the kickers are kind of even with Zerline and Boswell. Barry's had an improved year, but Johnny Hecker's probably the best punter, if not the best, one of the best in the league. And kick return game, the Rams have been better in that facet completely. As I said, we're 30th in returns. All around, I think the better offense wins, and that's the LA Rams. And I see us losing to the Rams 24-20. So, guys, this was the first episode of the Steel City Sermon. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to end every week the same, and that's on a trivia question. And if you'd like to answer, make sure you get on our show's Twitter at Steel City Sermon, or you can reach out to me at my personal Twitter at PreacherBoyRoy. And our trivia question this week: the Steelers only have 2 officially retired numbers. As we all know, it's number 70, Mr. Ernie Stautner. If you don't know him, Google him. You will be thanking me. Number 75, Mean Joe Green. My trivia question for you is, name the 11 numbers that have been semi-retired or not handed out since they completed playing. Let me repeat that. Name me the 11 numbers that have been semi-retired or not handed out since they have completed playing for the Steelers. And guys, if you know me from having the Pick 6 podcast, you know how I always end my podcast. I want to thank Blitzalytics for letting me do this. I want to thank Rob for all these cool graphics that are up around here. I mean, they're all cool. I couldn't do this myself. He showed me how to do it. Check out the All Heart Charity League. Check out all the new writers for Blitzalytics. The XFL coverage that we've been having has been excellent, and a lot of guys there. The Pick 6 pod, make sure you check it out. Give us a like, a share, a follow here for this. If you liked it, it's going to be on YouTube. Twitter's is at PreacherBoyRoy, my personal, and also the shows here at Steel City Sermon. And guys, girls, stay humble and be a blessing. Thank you.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh do this all the time. I've been playing them for 13 years. When you avoid the middle, they go into the middle. It's never changed. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, 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 black and yellow.